Good morning. Today I am unscripted, so who knows where this might go off the rails. But today I want to talk to you about my God winks with Amanda. If you watched my first video, you'll know I had a baby when I was 18 years old. And when I was 19, she died in a car accident. Someone hit me, an off-duty state trooper hit me. My second video covered the fact that then the county tried to cover that up and tried to turn it into my fault. And it was quite challenging to get through that, to say the least. It took me years and years and years. And what I'm ultimately here for is God winks, is I want to help someone else, because I held unforgiveness in my heart for the man, not the man that hit me, but the man that stole the car seat and hit it and tried to make it into tried to blame me for the accident and slander my name. And the man that hit me, I hated him too for a long time, but I also know he had to live with what he did, and it was an accident. Whereas the man who stole the car seat and the man that did that was all intentional. He did that knowingly and intentionally to try to protect someone else that he didn't even know. But anyway, I also through the years had to rely on some of my God winks to know that God had his hand in it. And I have friends who are atheists or who struggle to believe, and I personally cannot get along with that just because of Amanda, because I have to know that God's hand was in it so that I can survive it. Okay. And so back. I'm sorry, I'm skipping around. I told you I was raw and had no notes today. So I don't want anyone else to live with 30 years of that unforgiveness in their heart. I say blackness in their heart, and I don't want to say it like that because it sounds like I had a miserable life, and I did not. I always had that shadow of sadness because of losing a child, and anyone who's lost a child knows that just is a cloud that is always with them. No matter how happy and sunshiny it is, there's just a little piece of you that just isn't right and isn't settled, and that's just where it is. But it added to that because I had that hatred for Mr. Fisherman so deeply, and for the police in general so deeply. Like, somehow at one point I learned where he lived. It was an Easter. The fisherman was an Easter, and I went and I parked outside of his house, like across the street, and they were having a cookout, and I just sat there seething, imagining the things. And I guess that's where, I don't even know how I found out where he lived but I just hated him so bad, and hated the thought that he was enjoying his life and having all this happy cookout and enjoying Easter, and here I was so miserable. One time I had a police officer come up to me on the left, and nothing I hate worse than someone, like, when the road merges and you're waiting until that last second to try to cut me off. It just drives me crazy. And this police officer had come up, and he knew the road merged right ahead of us, and he came up and he wanted to try to race me, and I was having none of it. And so I was driving my Bronco at the time, and I stepped on that gas and I ran him kind of pretty much off the side of the road before he did get in front of me. And then I sat there behind him, like, revving up. Now, how did I not get a ticket? How did I not get in big trouble? I don't know. Like, I feel like back then it was a little bit of a smaller town. Like, did the police have my license plate and knew what I drove and said leave her alone? I don't know, because for the aggressive ways that I treated the police because of my anger, if I was, I don't know how I got away with it. I'll be honest with you, because I shouldn't have really gotten away with it. But anyway, what I'm really here to talk about is God winks. I'm here to talk about good things and lifting up. And so, shorter video because I was already halfway to work when I realized I needed to do this. But when Amanda was born, my friends were in the waiting room, and they happened to get up and were looking outside. It was 2:36 in the morning, and it started to snow at 2:36 a.m. and they looked at the clock like they knew when it had started to snow. And then, like, after Amanda was born, we went and told them, like, the date, when she was born at 2:36. So I didn't know, of course, because I was, in the pushing room. But it was amazing that they said, oh my gosh, she was born at 2:36, exactly when it started snowing. So we kind of called her a snow baby because it started snowing when she was born. Well, if you listen to my earlier videos, you'll know it was snowing the morning that she died on February 8th. She was due on February 8th. I was super late, didn't have her until February 26th. She died on February 8th. On February 8th, that morning that I left, it was snowing again. Beautiful little snow, not anything heavy, just enough to be pretty. And as you might know, like 30 years later, I still don't drive in the snow very well. But for 10 years after that, now I live in an area where we do get a little bit of snow. I live in Virginia, so we get a little bit of snow, but not a lot. We might get 2 snows every 3 years. It'll actually keep you from going to work a day. So we don't get much snow. But for 10 years, it snowed on February 8th. And it might not be calling for snow in the morning. It might be not snowing when I leave, but by the time I got to that cemetery, some flakes will be falling. Now, to go back, the very first year that I was at the cemetery on her death day, I stood there and I was just so defeated and so empty. I stood there and I was looking up at the heavens and praying God for some kind of sign. I had this vision in my mind of her sitting on Jesus's lap while little lambs and sheeps and puppy dogs scattered, bounced around his feet, and Amanda was sitting on his knee, on Jesus's knee, just cooing away. And that's the vision I tried to hold in my head after that. And that day, I was looking up into the heavens, praying for some kind of sign, imagining that that's where she was, right that very second, sitting on Jesus's knee, just having a good time, watching the little animals. And I was praying so fervently for a sign. And as I stood there staring up into the heavens, it started snowing on me. And so that was my sign. That was my sign that God was listening and God was trying to comfort me. And then as I truly struggled, it was about 10 years that God really still took me into his shelter and reminded me every February 8th on the way to the cemetery or at the cemetery, we would just get a little dusting of snow just to let me know that she was okay and that he had her in his arms. And so that was a comfort to me. And I just had to have some kind of comforts. Another coincidence, I already told you in an earlier video, she was just so joyful and happy every single day of her life. She rarely cried. She just talked to everybody. And the morning that she died, she was just so solemn. She barely spoke that morning. She was extra huggy, like she would just come over and hug you and sit with you, and was just quiet. And I was putting her in her car seat that morning before we left, and she was looking up at the skies, and the snow was falling. And the very last image I have of her in my eye, alive, was a snowflake fell and landed right in her little eyelash. And she blinked a few times and it kind of melted, and she just grinned and stared at it. And so that beautiful one little snowflake landing in her eyelash is just, it's a treasured memory that I have of her. And so that snow is really, but just how solemn she was. The snow is a big one. The snow is the biggest one that I have to let me know that God knew. God had a plan, and it was all in his direction. There are people out there that don't believe that, and that's okay. Everyone has their own beliefs, and that's what makes the world go round, right? But I will say that I had a boyfriend later on in life, and I talked to him about that and told him about the snow. He was suffering with, his mother was on her deathbed, and he believed in God, but he didn't have a relationship with him where he talked to him or looked for signs. Like I look for signs. And so anyway, that after I had told him about the snow and told him that if he asked God to help him through this, that God would help. And he just had to look for it. He had to be open to seeing what God's word was. And he'd gone outside on his front porch, and we had actually already broken up by this point, but we were on good terms. And he called me like 2 days after his mother died and said, "Thank you for telling me what you did about your daughter," because he stood out there smoking a cigarette waiting on his mother's last breaths, and lo and behold, it started to snow. And he thought of me, because it was right before. Anyway, he thought of me, he thought of my story, he saw the snow, and he said, "Oh my gosh." And he ran inside, and sure enough, that's when she had passed. So, you know, that little thing, that little bitty thing is what helped him. So if you're struggling with something, take some time to sit with God. Not only pray and talk to him, but then take some time to be quiet and listen to him and ask for some signs. So I'm at work, so this, like I said, is a quick video. And sometimes those signs might not be obvious. When my mom passed away, one of the signs that I asked for and that I kind of got was, weirdly enough, it was what do you call it? It was a bunch of black crows, like 25 black crows in my backyard. And I never had black crows in my backyard. And I always thought that black crows were a bad sign or a scary sign or something. But I looked it up. I Googled like the meaning of crows. I'm parked, so that's why I can look at you now. I looked up the meaning of what black crows were. And contrary to popular belief that black crows are a scary sign or death, black crows are a sign of renewal. So, you know, Mom had been praying on letting go of being in a new place where she wasn't in pain anymore. And so that brought me comfort. So look around you. If you see something a little bit odd that's a little bit different, Google it and see like if there's a deeper meaning in that, because it could be, and we just ignore it. So don't ignore the things. Look around you, open your eyes, pray, and then be quiet and listen. So that's it for now, because I got to go do some hair. But y'all have a great day. Be kind. Love yourself. Be kind to your own self. Love others, and work on, think about that person that you need to forgive. If there is a big thing out there, think about that and start to pray on that. Put that person up in your heart and give them to God and start working on that forgiveness, because it is life-changing, I'm telling you. We'll talk more. Okay, bye.